Welcome to Tomorrow's People, the podcast brought to you by Personio and me, Perry Timms. Everything starts with people, and everything was about people for the journey that we're about to explore with Estelle Hollingsworth, Chief People Officer at Virgin Atlantic, the famous brand with the red uniforms, but a heart-led way of helping people through turbulent change. Fascinating story for Tomorrow's People. Welcome to Tomorrow's People, Estelle Hollingsworth.
Thanks, Perry. It's really good to be
Great
here.
to have you here. So, in the intro, I talked about your role at Virgin Atlantic and so on, and I can't imagine many more organisations that have been through an enormous amount of challenge and chaos and change and stuff. So, how's all that going for you, and what's big in your world right now?
Yeah, no, thanks, Perry. It's so good to be here with you. I mean, as you said, literally our world was turned upside down during the pandemic, and we were one of the worst hit industries. And actually, aviation, yeah, as a whole was really badly hit. But Virgin Atlantic, we sort of cut quite deep in terms of the number of redundancies that we had to make because of the lack of flying. And we are, during the pandemic, we literally reduced by about 47% of our entire workforce. Which was just incredible, actually. And I look back now, Perry, and think, gosh, actually, there were moments where we were questioning our survival, and now we are absolutely going from strength to strength around getting past survival, past recovery, and now really into growth, which is phenomenal. And actually, during the pandemic, what struck me is that we were definitely true to our values. So I think Virgin Atlantic, we are a purpose-led company. We have a vision to be the most loved travel company. And actually, during that really difficult period, we made decisions that were true to our values, such as when we had to make our crew and pilots redundant, we did so by putting them into a holding pool where we stayed in contact with them and then brought them back on the same terms and conditions as those that had stayed with us. And so consequently, we had pretty much most of them coming back to us, which meant that during the operational ramp up, we didn't have the supply chain issues, the staffing issues that a lot of other companies did have, and just allowed us to really go in strong into the operational ramp up, which was fantastic. And I think consequently, as a result of everything that we've been through, I think now well-being is definitely a priority for us for this year. We've done a huge amount around mental health first aiders. We see the value of peer-to-peer support and counsel. So we've got a commitment to have 10% of our workforce trained as mental health first aiders by the end of the year. I'm one of them, and it's just been a fantastic investment of time and support for our people. It's incredible, actually. You see things very differently, having gone through the learning and shared stories with your colleagues. So we're doing that across the company, and then we're doing a lot of work around mental health in general. So Dr. Alex George came in. He's the UK mental health advisor for the government. He came in to talk to us about what we can do as a company to support our people. We're putting out our wellbeing platform at the beginning of September, and then really focusing on menopause, fertility, parents and carers, and we're launching our parents and carers network in September as well, actually. So that's one of the priorities, and then two other quick ones. I mean, performance, Perry, is huge, and I know we'll no doubt talk a lot about it, but it's so important that us being a performance-led company. So we have a commitment that we've got a new approach to performance. We've ditched the ratings. We've given a commitment that we will share 30,000 pieces of feedback to each other by the end of the year. So we're monitoring that, and I think just seeing the impact of that and actually seeing it in writing is unbelievable. So people really just appreciating that they have the opportunity to praise their colleagues, their leaders, their teams, but also really taking stock of actually how often are they doing it as well. So that's a big focus for us. And then the final one is that we are implementing a new system. So for our people and finance teams, so that's for implementation in October 24, but we're going through all of the process to really look at how do we do that in the best way possible. So yeah, so those I think are probably the three biggies given
Yeah.
the context that we've been through.
And they're all linked, aren't they? There's a lovely way that they sort of interplay and boost and
Yeah,
accentuate and so on.
definitely.
So I love the fact that you lead
Yes.
with the health and well-being thing, because if there's something that's hot like now and probably for the
Yeah.
next couple of years really, it is that we are up against some really complex challenges that people are really feeling both in a physical and mental
Yeah.
sense. And so to then link that through to how we like lift each other up, I guess, in terms of performance
Yeah,
and
definitely.
the appreciation that
Yeah.
we can share with each other, super
Yeah,
powerful.
absolutely.
Mm,
Yeah, and the resilience and
mm,
the investment that people made during the pandemic
mm,
to allow companies to continue to be successful. I
mm.
mean, we saw the love for Virgin Atlantic,
Yeah,
the love for our customers was just phenomenal. So to be able
yeah,
to support people
yeah,
now through that, but also beyond,
yeah.
is so important. So
That's
yeah,
lovely.
yeah,
And I do hear people talk sometimes about the whole sense of love at work, and people kind of get a bit cringy
yeah,
about it. It's almost like, oh, that's a bit culty. But there is something, isn't there, where you
yeah,
feel so attached to the people you're with and the
yeah,
people you do it for. Um,
yeah,
so there's this
yeah,
concept I love, and it's called companionate love. And it talks about just how strongly emotionally connected you
yeah.
get to people when you work with them day in, day out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Mm,
yeah, it's so interesting. And when we introduced our vision, which was to be that become the
mm,
most loved travel company, we actually consciously used the word love, exactly as you said, Perry, just in terms of we knew it was a word that we don't often, it's quite it's a big
mm,
word. It shows real depth of
mm.
feeling and commitment to people. But we sort of practiced
Mm.
actually saying what I love about you as
Mm.
opposed to what I like about you, or, and it felt much stronger, it felt much better.
Mm.
So consequently now that sense of
Yeah.
actually, yeah, we do have a love for our colleagues and for our customers is a really good one, and it's a conscious
Mm.
one that now we have meaning
Mm.
behind, and it makes it so much yeah, so much
Mm.
better for people. So yeah,
It brings the
interesting.
red in your corporate colours way from danger and into love because of the heart association. So
Yeah,
that's nice too. Um,
yeah,
if I go back to
definitely.
the time when you were having to make all those difficult decisions and create, as much
Yeah,
compassion and support as you possibly could for people, that must have felt
yeah.
pretty intense and pressured for you and the people team, right?
Yeah, it did. And what was interesting actually is I wasn't in the people team actually, Perry. So for
Mm.
the stint of my career, I was leading our cabin crew, our 4,000 cabin crew team at the time. So I had to be the person making those very difficult decisions with the support of the people team. So I saw it from
Ah,
through the eyes of
yeah.
the customer and operations
Mm.
team, but also with the real fantastic support of our people team. And that was an incredibly tough period, but one that just, yeah, I
Yeah.
thoroughly appreciated the
Yeah.
support that I got, and actually really sort of making the decisions in a thoughtful,
Yeah.
clear, and structured
Mm.
way helped us to get through it basically.
Mm.
But yeah, the pressure on
Yeah.
everybody was
Yeah.
phenomenal. But really going back to actually what do our
Yeah.
values stand for? What is the right thing to do for our people and our company is what helped us to make the
Mm.
right decisions ultimately. And we still carry that through now to say, actually, is there a reason why we're not doing
Yeah.
this? And so we've actually made other decisions based on what we learned
Oh,
through the
great.
pandemic. That if there's no reason not to do something, why aren't we doing it
Yeah.
then? And we saw that with our tattoo
Yeah. Saw
policy, with
that.
our gender identity
Mm.
policy, things that was just in place
Mm.
for no real logical reason, that nobody had really questioned it
Mm.
previously. So now we're questioning things and
Mm.
we're being bold, and yeah, and really sort of leading where we can, because it's the right thing to
Mm.
do and it actually helps people to be at their best. So
Mm.
yeah, it's
And
interesting.
I imagine the sense that people have of that is that you are really serious about it, you are committed, and it makes it a little bit easier for people to use that phrase, kind of lean into it, because it's believable, practical,
Yes.
they can see it.
Yeah.
And so often
Yeah.
we do circle around this kind of rhetorical thing, but we don't land it in that sort of sense. So it's nice to hear that
Yeah.
that's really taking effect and really giving
Yeah.
people a sense of reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Yeah, I absolutely appreciate that. That sort of transparency around actually why are we doing
Mm.
something, and actually, yeah,
Mm.
why is it, how is it going to benefit somebody
Mm,
as well. So yeah, I
mm,
absolutely feel really strongly about
mm.
that. So yeah, it's
And I
good.
guess if we do loop back to performance, because I mean, I guess that obviously was a key feature within everything you were doing. It was about, are we performing at our best
Yeah,
and doing the right things, like you say. So it takes on different meanings
yeah,
during crisis situations, performance, doesn't it?
yeah,
How's that feeling
yeah.
now? What's the sort of defining parameters around performance that people are getting really into and comfortable about and so on?
Yeah, I mean, for us, performance has always been really important, but I think now more than ever, are we talking about it? I think for me, what's really interesting is performance now is not just what you
Mm.
achieve, but also definitely
How?
how you
Yeah,
achieve
great.
it. So, yeah, so happiness is something that we
Mm.
measure as a company, and that is a boardroom
Great.
conversation that we consume ourselves with just as much as we would our commercial, metrics. So there is a balance to actually what we measure when we talk about performance now,
Great.
and actually what excites
Yeah.
our board, what
Mm.
excites our
Mm.
company, and that feels really good. So yeah, so I definitely see that shift. And I think
Yeah.
data driven is definitely a big
Yeah.
shift that I'm seeing as well around what are those metrics? Are they meaningful? Can people do
Yeah.
something with the information? And how are we allowing our teams to know that actually, if they do these things, they ultimately will be rewarded for it
Yeah.
as well? So that link
Yeah.
to reward and performance again is
Mm.
something that we feel really strongly about. To say, actually, yeah, be clear on it up front, work on it together as a team, and then be recognised and rewarded
Mm.
for achieving it at the end. I think is a really nice formula that we are trying to get more spread right across the company for our flying
Mm.
teams, for our ground teams, as much as we
Yeah.
can.
And you're right to use the word
So
formula, because I think lots of people
yeah,
professionals would say it's quite an elusive formula in some respects. They've tried to bring in performance related pay and often use those ratings, which clearly
yeah,
you've said we're not going down that route now. Um,
yeah,
and on
yeah,
the data side, having 30,000 pieces of feedback, I mean, that's going to give you some serious
yeah.
data to mine there, isn't
It's amazing.
it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And what's interesting, Perry, we have actually got a most loved formula
Ooh.
that, as a people team, we've sort of pulled together, which is happiness plus productivity times mindset
Mm.
equals most loved,
Mm.
because we're trying to show that for everybody to be happy is our starting point
Yeah.
around actually if you look after your people, just as Richard Branson said, we will then be able to look after our
Yeah.
customers. So that we call that the double
Mm-hmm.
helix, which is the
Mm.
sort of the joining of the
Mm.
two, the people and
Mm.
customers, and the spark you get when people are engaged and feeling really good about their jobs. They're going to be much more alive and energized when they're dealing with
Mm.
customers. But the balance then on
Yeah.
productivity is also really important. The great to feel at your best, but then use that energy to perform, to drive results, and to do
Mm.
something, but always underpinned through a mindset
Yeah.
of positivity, can
Mm.
do,
Mm.
kindness, inspiring and inclusive leadership that really helps people to, again, also be at their
Mm-hmm.
best. And that,
Mm.
equals most loved. So
Mm.
it's a good one. And I think it resonates really well with people to know that we want to be a company that genuinely has that
Yeah.
balance between what we do and the
Yeah.
outputs, as well as actually what are the things we do to care for our people to be happy as
Mm.
inputs.
And I can imagine it being on T-shirts and all sorts of things like that, because it's quite
Yeah,
memorable, isn't it? So it's not the sort of thing where you're like, how
yeah,
do I define this? It's really quite nice and flowy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm
definitely.
guessing that has meant that you've had to think about the sort of the way you frame things like talent, potential, leadership, all those kind of
Yeah,
things. Have you seen
yeah,
shifts in that as well?
yeah, I have. Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of shifts actually. One is around the fact that careers are no longer
Yeah.
vertical. That actually, I mean, we're pretty much half the size we
Yeah.
were pre-pandemic, although we're
Yeah.
growing now on the operational
Yeah.
side. So we're seeing that recovery, the
Yeah.
scalable sort of recovery. But ultimately, for our leaders, our senior leaders as well, that the career paths are very
Mm.
different to what they were
Yeah.
pre-pandemic. So how we are thinking about
Yeah.
cross-functional movement is really increasing, and yeah, and really sort of making a difference to how people think about
Mm.
things now. It's not about your technical technical knowledge, it's about your leadership skills and having a really strong technical team to support you in that leadership role. So you can effectively go from commercial to people. So one of my people leadership team members came from
Right.
commercial. I've got another person from our cabin team in customer who are now people
Yeah.
leaders within the people leadership team, but don't have necessarily years of experience, but rely on a team who do. So that combination, I think, is really important. And I think going back to the mindset piece for our talent, it is around what is that mindset that we're seeing, and actually how do we, include that in our definition of potential, and how do we think about the qualities of our leaders so that actually they are able to not only get the job done but create the environment that really is going to allow our company to be seen as one of the best places to work, and to be seen as an inclusive place where you do belong and feel a real sense of belonging. So that's part of our conversations now, not just people's technical and
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
capability experience, but also their mindset. And I think the third thing, Perry, that I hear us talking about a lot is this portfolio management also of skills and experience. How do you collect? What's your portfolio requirement, and then how do you build the experience and skills to put into that portfolio so that at every point you are marketable, you can redefine yourself if you need to based on changes in external environments in the world, in society, or structurally and within the company, so that actually resilience wise we're in a strong place. So those are the conversations also that are really consuming us to make sure that we're fit for purpose. And I think as a company we do that exceptionally well in terms of really rigorously reviewing all of our talent, every quarter, having a really sort of 6 monthly review of how are we structured as
Yeah.
an organization, and how do we set ourselves up to be even better structured so that we can make sure that we are achieving what we want to achieve for ultimately for our customers. So it's good. It's a good discipline to
Yeah.
have, and does change the conversation when you talk then about talent.
And especially for an organisation in your sort of size and scale and reach and breadth and geolocations and everything
Yeah,
else, because that just adds a whole wave of complexity and nuance and so
yeah,
on, doesn't it? So I'm loving the
yeah,
elevated
yeah,
feel to this, and how people can still
yeah,
see
yeah,
themselves there, though, which I think
hmm,
is really important.
yeah,
And I'm guessing people are
yeah,
feeling the sense that mindset being so important means that
yeah,
with the right attitudinal, aspirational things, there's a whole raft of
yeah.
possibilities here.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly that. Yeah. And we see that, Perry, even down, when we think about our cabin crew recruitment, our volume recruitment, for
Yeah.
example, we, we start with mindset being ultimately what is, what we're recruiting for, and we take away the filters that perhaps then previously stifled people through, particular requirements, educational requirements, things that, actually people may be disadvantaged for whatever reason as to why they may not have gone to
Yeah.
university or got A levels or whatever. So where we can take away filters that are again meaningless in terms of the quality of the people we're looking
Yeah.
for, we take them away, and then we use a very situational judgment approach to looking at value-based decisions. What would we see you doing if this happened? How would you react if a customer did this? So again, it's based then on competence, in terms of in the moment, but also what your mindset is, how you hold yourself in the moment, and how you base those decisions on the values that are then a fit with our company as well. So it's really interesting, and consequently we have seen huge increase in our male cabin crew. So really at the 30 plus percent male applicants coming in. We had 10% disability disclosure from people, and ethnicity again was really, really high,
Okay.
and I think it was nearing 30%. So again, it was really great. It gave us an absolute, completely different um, shortlist, long list and short list of people that maybe previously wouldn't have applied had we not focused on this
Yeah.
mindset. So it is really interesting from a diversity inclusive perspective. It really works as well.
Talks to a number of different ways people
Yeah,
feel potential
definitely,
prejudice and impairment and debarment, and just kind of
definitely.
opens the channel much more widely,
Yes,
which I love. And it
yeah,
really sounds like
absolutely.
there's an EQ lead over an IQ lead here, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, yes, there it is definitely, and I think we definitely, as the more senior you go, in terms of the scope and the complexity of the role, of course, there is an intellectual requirement in terms of how you make decisions, how you
Yeah.
absorb complex information that we
Yeah.
don't
No.
disregard. So it's definitely an important
Mm.
element of actually what makes a great leader at
Mm.
Virgin Atlantic, but the mindset
Mm.
overall is what underpins
Mm.
everything for
Mm.
us. So that's really at the
Mm.
heart of us being really trying to make sure we get the
Yeah.
culture, the output
Yeah.
of the environment that we're trying to create for people, and ultimately have the best experience that you can every day at
Mm.
work. So yeah,
Nice.
it's an interesting
And I
one.
guess a portfolio feels like people can do that collecting. I love that phrase. Almost to like
Yeah,
when the role's right for me, I've got this portfolio of things I
yes,
can put in to prove my credentials, but also knowing my
yes,
mindset is a differentiator.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, it's good. And we're doing a lot around talent profiles manually at the
Yeah.
moment, in advance of
Tech.
the new system coming in, which will definitely make things easier
Mm.
for us. But every person, every leader in the company has a talent profile that really gives them an opportunity to sort of tell their
Nice.
story about
Mm.
who they are, what they've achieved, but also, how their mindset has helped
Mm.
them in terms of the skills and the qualities that they demonstrate. It's a great storytelling
Mm.
conversation that ultimately talent now is about.
Mm.
And we've moved away from the conceptual view of talent around, nine box
Yeah.
grids and, everything on a
Yeah.
spreadsheet that's hidden away that you never talk about,
Yeah.
to a much more transparent
Yeah.
conversation that's meaningful and that really does then take action and
Yeah.
make things happen for people. And I think people really value that
Mm.
actually you have a conversation and something happens
Mm.
as a result of it.
Mm.
And that feels good as well.
Stronger sense of purpose to that, linked to
Yeah,
the whole
yeah,
purpose of being here in the first place. Hey there, it's Perry Timms, host of Tomorrow's People. Let's talk about HR solutions. From hiring to payroll, an all in one solution is simply better for business. A solution like Personio covers each stage of that all important employee lifecycle. Upgrade your HR work today at personio.com. That's PERSONIO.com. All of the things you
yes.
described are really coming through in a couple of words. One is versatility. It feels like versatility is a strong
Hmm.
feature for who you are. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
And
Yeah,
therefore, the other one
yeah,
I'm kind of linking that to is agile, being having an
yeah,
agility kind of approach, and
yeah,
there's something interesting about that because it's an easy word to say, isn't it? Let's be more agile, but actually, it's like,
yeah,
but yeah, but what does that mean, and how do we actually do it? I mean, are
yeah,
you really feeling the
yeah.
strength of pull and/or application of agility-based things going on? Mm.
Yeah, we are. I mean, yes, we from how we
Mm.
operate in terms of, from a career perspective through to sort of day to day, what you see people doing and working on, we still approach it through squads,
Yeah.
for
Okay.
example. So, within my team, if there's something that really requires a cross
Yeah.
team or even cross functional approach, then yes, we
Yeah.
are bringing those people together, and then they broaden
Mm.
their experience, they broaden their skill sets,
Mm.
their view of actually how they can add
Mm.
value to a solution. And across the company, we have formed cross-functional
Nice.
teams that really, again, come
Mm.
together, really work in an agile way to make decisions
Mm.
quickly but
Yeah.
thoughtfully. And that is a continuation of what we saw during the pandemic, but really understanding that yes, you have your directorate team, but most importantly, you have your cross-functional
Mm.
team where things really do happen and where actually you need the commercial,
Mm.
customer, finance, operations teams to all come together in order to make really important decisions. And it takes three times as
Yeah.
long if you don't do that and you don't sort of really get the cadence of those
Yeah.
meetings up. So yeah, I definitely feel
Yeah.
that we're doing that, and we're doing it not in a particular sort of
No.
methodology way, but more just making it work for us that feels quite
Yeah.
simple but really effective.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's good. I think
Critical.
it's less complicated that
Yeah.
way. So
Exactly
yeah,
that, and again, it talks to mindset, doesn't it? So you're sort of leading with the mindset of having
yeah,
that in the leading part of this, and then you assemble it however's relevant to that
Yeah.
context.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the absolute
Yes,
definition of
definitely.
agility, really, if you ask me. So
Yeah.
anyone who says it's
Yeah.
prescriptive is like, you're kind of missing the point here. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Exactly.
and
Exactly. And I genuinely don't think we would have
no,
survived the pandemic
without,
if we hadn't have been
mm,
agile and literally been able
absolutely,
to rearrange
yeah,
ourselves and
yeah.
work in real sort of unity
Yeah,
together. So yeah.
and that's a lovely word as well, unity, because yeah, people often think about it as disassembly and therefore fragmentation or fracturing.
Yeah.
But really, you're right. There's almost like, but we are having to be, in a higher entropic state, right? We've got to be a bit more
Yeah.
dispersed. But that doesn't mean to say
Yeah.
we are not together in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
Exactly. Yeah.
mm,
I
mm.
agree. Yeah. And being one team.
Yeah,
And that's one of the reasons why we sort of reassessed our performance
yeah,
approach because we were saying actually we want to be one team, but we don't
yeah,
actually really sort of look at things from a team perspective
yeah,
as much as we should do. So let's do that. Let's have within our system
yeah,
now directorate objectives, but cross-functional objectives that then are measured and monitored as part of our
yeah,
performance approach that really shows the power of the
yeah.
team. So yeah, so that's something that we talk about
Great.
a lot now, which is good.
And you kind of hit a philosophy of mine, which is, I often say the real power source in any organization is at team level, and it's how you aggregate
Yeah,
that and so on. So I'm really glad to hear
definitely.
that. That's
Yeah,
got me really
yeah,
quite like buoyant about that.
yeah, yeah,
And so that does talk as well to the whole sense of how you then align your talent and
yeah,
identify it and so on. So I'm guessing a
yeah,
lot of your parameters for what makes a good Virgin Atlantic person is that ability to be
yeah.
team oriented, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is. We've got, I mean, we have our values as Virgin Atlantic, think red, make friends, and be
Awesome.
amazing. They're the three
Mm,
fundamental. So the make friends one is an ability to connect, with colleagues, as a team, but also with our
mm,
customers, with our partners, with our suppliers. And it really is that genuine put yourself in the
yeah.
shoes of the other person and see the world, see the world differently as our campaign from last
Mm,
year, but also see the world from their
mm,
perspective is fundamental to everything. But we've got our three values that cut across every
mm,
single person in the company. And then for our leaders, we have qualities that we say these are the qualities that really are what we define as being a Virgin Atlantic leader. So trust is at the heart of
yeah.
that, obviously leading with trust, but curiosity
Nice.
plays out. And so does delivery,
Yeah.
delivering results, storytelling is part of
Great.
that list of ingredients, and the team as well
Yeah.
plays a really important part in that as well. So we've sort of really made it clear that actually these are the
Mm,
things that ultimately, if you don't
mm,
demonstrate and live and breathe every day, then actually this isn't the company for you.
mm,
And I think it's really good in today's
mm,
world that people ultimately have very clear expectations about what they want from a company
yeah.
and what they need from a company, but equally companies have an opportunity to say this is who we who we strive
Yeah.
to be and who we want to be. And so you also can make a decision as to whether you
Yeah.
feel you're well placed
Yeah.
here or
Yeah.
not, as the case may be. So I think it's definitely a two-way
Mm.
a two-way thing.
It is.
So
It is,
yeah,
and you're so right about the whole sort of sense of how people feel about that. Because I've seen a lot of people talk about culture fit and almost like obsessed about that. It's like, this is how
yeah,
you absolutely have to be here. And then it's almost like, are we talking about Stepford employees here? It feels a little bit replicational,
yeah,
and this feels
yeah,
like you can still be yourself, but there are some
totally.
parameters where it's like, but that's not what this is all about. So that people still have some
Yes,
lines, right?
yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. And it's a really good point, Perry, that we're not saying you have to
No.
be a particular type of
Yeah.
person, but it is that you have to fundamentally have our
Yeah.
values, that you connect with them emotionally
Mm.
and yeah, sort of
Mm.
mentally, so you can feel that actually you can put those into practice every
Mm.
day. But being yourself and actually being able to bring your full self to work is what we're about. And that, interestingly, through the
Mm.
policies that we build, allows us to say these are the differentiators. This is how we're going to become truly
Yeah.
inclusive. And I think what we're saying to our leaders, as an example, is it's all good and well having amazing policies that make you different, that make you feel really included and inclusive. But if you don't use those
Yeah.
policies consistently, then what is the point of
Yeah.
having them? So So really, we've made it clear to leaders that you have a responsibility to be
Yeah.
inclusive and to know how to make your environment for your people feel right, respond to their needs, to their requirements, and yeah, and build those
Mm.
adjustments where required. So it's holding our leaders to account in order to allow our
Mm.
people to feel that they can be different within a world that
Mm.
actually resonates to them through the values that we have. So it's bringing all of those things
Yeah.
together, clear on
Yeah.
requirements, clear on what we stand for, and
Yeah.
embracing difference in its truest sense, I
It's
think.
comforting for people, isn't it? Because they've got some kind of,
Yeah,
buffers, guardrails, guidance. Because if
yeah,
people have to challenge somebody about a behaviour, then it's sometimes
yeah,
quite difficult to then say, is this just my judgment, or is this a kind of breach of us? And
yes,
so that it gives
yeah,
an added sense of how they can frame the conversation with somebody by saying, this is not just an affront on me. This is not what we are about here. It's a
yeah,
different kind of conversation, isn't
yeah.
it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, it takes it up a
Mm.
level and allows you to understand why
Yeah.
this that particular thing is
Yeah.
important and
Yeah.
why it's a requirement. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, definitely.
And it also
Yeah,
sounds like you've done something that I've been talking about a little bit when I'm on the other side of a podcast mic, which is a little bit of a
yeah,
frustration for me that we often build policies almost just at the point of
hmm
misdemeanor. And I'm like, why don't we have
hmm
elevated policies that say, no, this is the art of brilliance to
yeah,
aim for,
yeah,
but there's the red line. Don't cross that red line. But this is this is the, and it
totally.
sounds like you've got lots of that
Yes,
in there because you're inviting people to go
yeah.
way above that line of just acceptable, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And we often have that conversation with me and my
Right.
team, around we shouldn't build policies for the exceptions. We should be
Yeah.
really building them for exactly like you
Mm.
say, setting the bar
Mm.
high, being able to deliver the best, best performance through setting an environment
Mm.
that is going to allow to to be at their
Mm.
best. And the tattoo policy
Yeah.
being an example of that, where we were saying, actually, if we set this approach that actually allows our frontline customers to, or frontline teams to show their tattoos with their customers, obviously after a lot of thought
Mm.
and research with our customers to make
Mm.
sure that actually, that was
Mm.
something that was inspiring to them as
Mm.
well. It was a really great opportunity for us to
Yeah.
say, yeah, let's have a policy that really does liberate our people and strive for being market leading in how we think about the world and how the world is
Yeah.
changing. And I think that has to be the
Yeah.
role of people now in terms of being ahead of the game, thinking about things that exist for the sake of
Mm.
existing and challenging and really sort of setting the parameters within which people
Yeah.
work so that actually it feels
Mm-hmm.
effortless to work and
Mm.
live at Virgin
Mm.
Atlantic, for example. So
Mm.
yeah,
Nice.
and having a journey as well. We have, so for our customers, we have 26 touch
Right.
points where we say each touch point is really important for our customers, and we do the same for our
Cool.
people, where we've got our people
Mm.
journey, 26 touch points. And with that comes a framework of actually what are the experiences we want to create, how do we want people to feel, and then what policies or what approaches do we need to support that feeling.
Mm.
So yeah, that's how it sort of is framed for
Which is
us.
also a nice way to set those expectations, isn't it? Like through stages and
Yeah,
instances and so on, because it only takes one breach of that experience for suddenly somebody to feel a little bit
yeah,
withdrawn and not quite part of it. And
yeah,
we hear about
yeah,
chaos instances and broken windows and stuff. It feels like that sometimes in the
yeah,
workplace. If they have something really not good happen,
yeah,
it can take a long time to repair that, and
yeah.
we'd rather avoid
Totally.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, totally, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. And to take things case by,
Yeah.
where there are things that
Yeah.
aren't going right, nothing is
No.
perfect. So, um, you know, we have situations that we need to look at case by case
Mm.
and really work through what is the right thing to
Mm.
do, to make sure that
Yeah.
this person feels
Okay.
supported and is the right thing for the company as well. So, yeah,
Nice. And so a couple of phrases popped into my head as you were talking, and one is,
yeah,
I guess the sense that sometimes we have repeat cycles of a war for talent. I mean, I don't know where you sit on that.
hmm
Is that something you experience? Is it difficult for you to get the right talent? Is it is it genuinely that you're having to fight off competition and people are competing to get some of your brilliant people away from you?
yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think it definitely depends on the
Okay.
role. So, for example, with our cabin crew campaigns, we call them campaigns because we're
Yeah.
always recruiting for sort of larger
Yeah.
numbers. But last year we had around 10,000 applications for about 700
Wow.
roles. So it was really sort of so we don't have any
No.
difficulty for cabin
No.
crew in terms of the reputation, the brand, the experience that we offer, I
Yeah.
think is really known as
Yeah.
being an
Yeah.
inclusive one and really important to our crew. But then for other roles, yes, there is a real competitive nature when we look at data roles, when we look at technology, when we look at more niche roles.
Mm.
But I also really now realise that the war for talent isn't just about the sort of capability of the person, but it is around to what extent do you invest in
Yeah.
the community as a
Right.
company? To what extent are you creating a day-to-day experience that will allow them to, skip out of the door and go home to their friends or their family feeling good about their day's work? And I don't think we have no reason now to to sort of feel that we've done
Yeah.
it. We can't stand still on these things, and I think we have to always
Yeah.
improve our experience.
Yeah.
And every day I will find things with my team where we're saying that's not good
Mm.
enough, we need to do that
Mm.
better, because ultimately people have high expectations just like our customer
Yeah.
does. And so the war for talent is
Yeah.
two-way,
Yeah.
definitely, in that it is an opportunity for people to choose now which company they work for and why,
Mm.
and how that company makes them feel. So
Mm.
yeah, so it's something that you have to
Yeah.
consciously work at every
Yeah.
day.
There is a nice sense of that, isn't there? That every day is an opportunity for you to just tighten up, sharpen up, smarten up, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Because it feels
totally.
less like an absolutely massive reboot and just a series of upgraded releases
Yeah,
and so on, which feels much more
exactly.
gentle, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Which does
definitely.
link
Yeah,
to my other
yeah,
thought as you were talking, which is about change and the fact that we
yeah,
have had so much and we still have so much to do. And I'm really picking up a sense from some
yeah,
people. They are change fatigued. They're like, don't
yeah.
mention the C
Yes.
word. I mean, I don't know if that's anything that you've managed to sort of turn back on itself and create a bit more energy about
Yeah,
change and stuff.
yeah. It's an interesting question actually, because I think if I think back to when I joined Virgin Atlantic, and it was only, I'm in my
Right.
sixth year, it feels much, much
Yeah.
longer, but it actually isn't
Mm.
so far
No.
back. But I remember there was almost a perception that, we're not good at dealing with change because, it's a big
Yeah.
thing, you have to sort of really plan for it, and, how do we do that? As many, many companies, feel the same. It's sort of one of those things that always comes up in a survey, for example, we need to improve how we deal with change. But actually, we were thinking actually we are pretty good at change actually, and so we were trying to sort of work out where does this perception come from. But actually, the
Yeah.
pandemic, without
Yeah.
question, for most, if not all companies out there, has
Yeah.
also given a
Mm.
refresh of actually we are pretty phenomenal at
Mm.
change. And I sort of look back and think about how we dealt with that change
Yeah.
from a leadership perspective of from our CEO being literally there talking to the entire company, really in a quite a vulnerable way around this is what's going to happen, this is how we're going to work through this together. This is how we're going to take you with us on this
Mm.
journey to make sure we get through this. Was phenomenal right the way through to how people were working in an agile
Mm.
way in teams to really make sure that they worked round the clock to
Yeah.
deliver and to really get through this. So we take so many lessons from that I think now it's no longer such a big thing
Great.
actually for
Yeah.
us, which is quite interesting. So it's almost like the opposite to maybe some
Yeah.
companies where we've proven that this is just another change
Yeah.
almost rather than okay, here we go. It's we're steeped in how to do this, and actually being an airline ready for any crisis, ready for any change is part of what we
Yeah.
should be and what part of what we excel in
Mm.
anyway. So yeah, so it's an interesting one. It definitely I think we're much more planned and
Mm.
forward-looking in terms of the sort of outlook to 2030 now is not unreasonable and that we're
Mm.
starting to do already. So that real sense of the stretch being further and how do
Mm.
we anticipate change
Yeah.
more thoughtfully
Mm.
and taking time to do that is definitely part
Mm.
of everyday work now. So yeah, it's an interesting
That's
one.
great. I mean, I think we would probably be right to say the nature of change has changed, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
change in the way you've just described it is more a way of being rather than what you're doing. So I think again talks to your
yeah,
mindset thing, and I think that's perhaps where you're
yeah,
more at
yeah,
ease with it and more comfortable about it.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Um,
I would
mm,
I would add though,
mm,
Perry, just thinking about it, that I think we don't either
no,
underestimate the change, because actually thinking about who we were as a
yeah,
company now, sort of what we've been through, I know that actually our people have been through it, almost like a a massive psychological change around yeah, those that
mm,
were made redundant that
mm,
have come back to us, those that weren't and had to
mm,
work, those that were on furlough.
mm,
So that does weave into our well-being actually
mm,
around whilst we feel strong about change, I don't, certainly in my role as Chief People Officer, don't underestimate for one
no,
second the impact of that on people's
yeah,
lives, on people's families, on what how they feel about
yeah,
the world, how they feel about their jobs. So I really want to make sure that
mm,
that's captured as well, because it's so important to me that
yeah.
it's something that really is on my mind a lot
It
actually
comes
as
through, and I
well.
think even when you introduced and started to talk about it, it was a very sort of aware of change, the dynamic of it, but also like not considering it to just be programmatic, but it's much more sophisticated.
Yeah,
Because I think what I'm really
yeah,
starting to see is if you lead change through that emotional lens to start with,
yeah,
it's a great way to get
yeah,
people to go, right, you're addressing something in me already, which is fear, uncertainty, anxiety. I'm
yeah,
comforted by that. Now tell me what I've got to do. Um, but if you
yeah,
just lead with what you
totally.
got to do, they're like, but
So true.
why? And what for me?
Yeah,
So it
absolutely.
can be quite
Yeah,
disconcerting. So
absolutely.
there's something nice in
Yeah,
that.
yeah, there is. And seeing as your
Yeah.
leader, the CEO of a company,
Feeling.
feel so connected to something
Mm.
that they feel an emotional response to it, is pretty
That's
it's hard
powerful, isn't it?
hitting in terms of it,
Mm.
yeah, your emotional outlet
Yeah.
from that. So that was the tone that was set right from
Great.
day one of the pandemic,
Mm.
and that sort of helped us to
Mm.
really lead with emotion, with feeling, as well as making very, very tough decisions. But how we made those
Yeah.
decisions, we hopefully did
Yeah.
in the most caring way that we could. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's
Seems that
interesting.
way, and it's feeling like it's thought led change, but it's also thoughtful change, which I guess is
Yeah,
comforting again to
yeah,
people in the
yeah,
times when it is just like I just don't really know what to even think or do about this, and you can help
yeah,
them do that. That's
totally.
great. I was also
Yeah,
thinking how, in a
absolutely.
nice way, you probably at the time you had to face into some of those really tough decisions and actions.
Yeah,
You probably cashed in some of your culture chips that you'd invested in the past, which people would willingly have sort of said, yeah, fair play, that's all right. You've looked after me up till now. This is what's the next stage. So it
yeah,
does talk
yeah,
about that,
yeah,
doesn't it? How you
yeah,
invest, like literally, in people.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean the loyalty we had from people, right across the
Mm,
company, our cabin crew, our pilots, our ground teams was
mm,
phenomenal actually, and just very
mm.
overwhelming to see that they would literally have done anything for the company to
Yeah,
stay
amazing.
here. So it was
Mm,
amazing. Yeah, it was truly unique and special. And I think as a company we are quite unique like
yeah,
that actually, in terms of the depth of going back to the love
yeah,
word, of that real sense of like, I don't just like you, I
yeah,
literally love, love you,
yeah.
love my customers, love what we stand
Mm,
for. So you felt that depth of feeling come out actually in different ways, but it definitely came out in
mm.
loyalty, and real sort of resilience as well. So it was yeah, very good to see.
And you are right. I try and tune my radar to organisations that could testify in the way that you have, and there aren't many of them. There really aren't. And I
Yeah,
guess my sense is what I want is for more companies like you to quite literally be the flag waver for that way, so that people can go, it's not lift and
yeah,
shift this, but again, back to mindset. This is how we could be with
yes,
this. This is what
yeah,
it feels like for
yeah,
people. So the more those stories come through, I think the
yeah,
better.
definitely. Yes, I
Mm.
agree.
Well, we've covered a lot already so far, Estelle. Is there anything else that you're thinking about you'd like to share that I haven't asked you about yet?
I think just the fact that I suppose the piece around the qualities
Yeah,
of our leaders,
yeah,
and the sort of importance and the prevalence of that, I think, and the role that the people function
yeah,
has now, I think is I feel really uplifted by
Okay.
it in terms of just in terms of the importance of empathy, understanding, kindness. Was a word that probably wasn't used that much,
Yeah.
pre-pandemic, but was something that was really important to people anyway in life in general. But now it's definitely part of how we expect our leaders to operate in order to allow people to feel that
Mm,
they are able to perform. So the link to kindness and care and support with really strong
yeah.
outputs, I think is a really important one that
Yeah.
I don't want to let go
No.
of, because I think it's just, so if we do, we've
Yeah.
lost it in terms of that sort of balance. And I think also the role that the people teams have in a company. I mean, ultimately, as chief people officer, my role is twofold. One, to really mitigate
Yeah.
risks and really safeguard the company from an employment and a people
Mm,
perspective around due
mm,
diligence, around
mm,
governance controls. And then the other half of that is to allow our people to thrive and
yeah.
be high
Yeah.
performing, every single
Yeah.
person, and to be happy at work. And I think the importance now that boards, that companies, CEOs, exec teams place on that
Yeah.
balance, I think is phenomenal. And I think we need to just keep going. And I know it's tough for people teams out there, because
Yeah.
it's still a sort of sometimes slightly hidden directorate, and
Yeah.
slightly sort of you hear from people if things go
Yeah.
wrong. You don't necessarily hear thank you so much for paying me
Yeah.
this month, and so on. So it's sometimes an unsung hero directorate, but equally we
Mm,
play a massive
mm,
role in company
mm.
success. And I think that strength, knowing that, and having an opportunity to sort of connect with other HR professionals to really remind ourselves of that is really important, I
I
would
love
say.
that. I love the fact that you said uplifted by it, because I am too. I'm actually
Yeah,
seeing the word value with its plural version. So you've got value as in creating value, and values as
yeah,
something that sits so brilliantly in us, because we are the sort of
yeah,
combination, almost like the
definitely.
alchemy of those two things, aren't we?
Yeah, I think so.
Good.
Yes,
I'm with you
absolutely.
on that
Yeah,
one. And,
yeah,
and I think it's no kind of accident that we're starting to see the term people professionals more, and people and culture teams,
yeah,
because I think I'm
yes.
very comfortable with HR as a definition for our practice field. I'm okay
Mhm,
with that. But if we are known
mhm.
as people professionals, and it is that link between
Yeah,
safety and thriving,
yes,
care and
yeah,
unleashing, kind of now and the
yeah,
future, I think there's
yeah.
something really, really quite compelling about
Mm,
that feel, isn't there?
totally. Yeah, there is definitely. And yeah, and how it doesn't happen automatically.
No,
You do have
work
to
at it.
work at it. And every company
Yeah.
has to, yeah, really sort of have a strong plan
Mm.
to allow it to be
Yeah,
successful. So
exactly.
yeah,
Well, thank
definitely.
you, Estelle, for such a lovely ramble and wander and
Yeah,
fly
lovely.
path route to all
Oh,
the things that you've done that have made a difference and that you've still got to do and face into. But yeah,
yeah,
I'm loving
definitely.
the positivity and the drive, but also the results and the sensation that it's creating. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thank you so much,
Super.
Perry. I really appreciate it.
Good.
It's been lovely to chat with
Yeah, and congratulations on making HR's most influential practitioners list as well. So
you.
well done on that,
Oh,
Estelle,
thank you so
and your
much.
team and all their
Yeah,
award winning and all that kind of stuff. You
yeah, we've won a flurry of them
nice,
actually, which is amazing
good,
actually. So yeah, most loved workplace in the
beautiful.
UK by Newsweek, which is great. So
Oh,
yeah, really
really
good.
nice.
Good,
So it
yeah,
feels good.
thank you.
It's accredited, and yeah, it's been a joy to experience it and share it with you, Estelle. So thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Perry. Thank you very much.
If you've enjoyed this episode of Tomorrow's People, please subscribe and check out our previous episodes from wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you want to transform your people processes, head to personio.com.